Serving their community is who they are because they love where they live. REMAX 3D Real Estate is proud to bring you Heart of Greenville, a video series dedicated to celebrating all the wonderfully great things about Greenville, Texas. On every episode, Tanisha Denny will share Greenville's story through the stories of people who call Greenville home. This is Heart of Greenville.
Thank you so much for watching Heart of Greenville. I asked Threesa Sadler to come on the show because I wanted to know more about her story. And boy, did I find out more than I ever thought I would know at the end of this conversation. I can't wait for you to hear about Threesa, not only her journey through her experiences, but how she has come through with incredible redemption. Here's my conversation with Threesa. Hey y'all, I'm Tanisha Denny, your host of Heart of Greenville, and today we're sitting down on the third floor at the landmark on Lee Street at The Landing. And my special guest today is Miss Threesa Sadler. How are you today, Threesa?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, and I want everyone to know, and they've heard your name before, but you're with the Raffa Clinic.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I want us to talk about that. That's important because your clinic does so much for our community. But I really want them to get to know you. The purpose of our show is to tell your story, and so I want us to get into that. But let's talk about you for a minute. So tell everyone, when did you get to Greenville?
I actually was not born here like a lot of people claim, but my dad was a police officer here for over 30 years, and so when I was about 6 months old, we lived way up in northeast Texas, like Bowie, Red River County area, and Greenville Police Department was growing and fast, and they needed some new officers, and at the time, that was the big city compared to where we were, and so he and my mom packed up a newborn, and they relocated here, and we've been here ever since.
Oh, wow. Okay, but that's 30 years of his service here.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up and being the police chief's daughter?
It was definitely an experience. I never got away with anything because speeding, getting, all the teenage fun that you want to try to get away with. I felt like he had eyes everywhere all the time.
And he really did.
He really did. There's a few stories, if we had more time, I could share. But it was actually a wonderful environment because I had so many people that I could look up to. A lot of those guys that were there during those years, the 80s and 90s when I remember them growing up. I spent a lot of time at the old police station when it was in the municipal building.
Oh, wow.
And so I just, got to know them. Leon Powers was the chief there for a long time, and Barry Paris, and they were just amazing influences. And to see how they impacted my dad and just the community, for me, it was a great environment to grow up with so many men and women at the time that were just, some of the bravest, kindest people I'd ever met.
They are so brave. They put their lives on the line every single day for us. Okay, what's your favorite story to tell your kids about being a kid growing up with your dad?
I think my favorite one, well, there's a couple, but I think my favorite one is one time I was at the high school, Greenville High School, and my dad, I had an after-school practice at something, and my dad came to pick me up, and apparently he had been at a crime scene before that, and there was something he was needing to take over to Dallas that probably most kids don't have in the car whenever their parents pick them up. I don't want to get him in trouble. It wasn't bad, but it was just awkward.
Right.
And so there was that. I mean, we just drove around a police car everywhere. It was an unmarked car, but those, you can always tell.
But you can still tell.
You can always tell. But I mean, I get pulled over for speeding. I mean, I think we are like in that we like to get places quickly.
Yes, we do.
And so,
how do you know that about me?
I remember a Facebook post that you had posted once. But I do remember one time I was on my way through town and I got pulled over, and I was never one to be like, oh, well, do you know who my dad is? Like, I would never pull that card. That's not okay. But when your dad's name is on the insurance because you're a minor and they see it and then they run it, and now all of a sudden my cell phone's ringing in my car and I'm like, I am not answering that phone because I know what's on the other end of it. But it was a great experience. And I still have relationships with some of those guys that are retired and still in the community, and I still look up to them. So.
Well, that's so cool that you have that. Yeah. And I'm sure that did leave you with such a feeling of honor you know, for those men and women that do serve us.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you and Terry. How did you guys meet?
We actually were high school sweethearts. We met in Ron Shackelford's biology class at Greenville High School.
Oh, well, you just took me way back.
Right. Bio 2. I was R and he was S, and we were in alphabetical order. And so we paired up as lab partners and studying, and we had a friendship, and it just grew from there. And we celebrate 24 years of marriage this summer.
Oh,
so,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, what's your best piece of advice for that? How do you make it 24 years, Threesa?
Well, I think having the Lord is a huge part of that, and just being able to, you know, make him first and your marriage second, because that brings you closer together. But I won the lotto with that one. And so he's just an amazing guy, and I'm very blessed. He's very supportive of every wild thing I get my head on that I want to go do, and he's super supportive of that, and he makes it happen. And, you know, we have 4 kids, and they range from 19 to 8. And so we're super busy between his practice and Raffa and all the kids, but he makes it happen. He makes it happen for all of us, and just does it so beautifully. So
tell everyone what he does. I know a lot of people know him. And
he's a physical therapist. He's been around for quite a while. I should probably know how many years he's been practicing, but I don't remember. He works for Hunt Regional Medical Partners now, runs their sports therapy clinic. They're in the hospital. But it's interesting. I don't know all the people he comes in contact every day, because he doesn't tell me, because they're his patients.
Right.
But I love when we're out in the community and somebody will come up and say, "Oh, I know your husband. I just love him." And all of a sudden they connect us, you know, because they just didn't know we went together. And then I'm the little like, "Oh, you're Terry's wife now," because they just think he's the best thing ever. And you know, just super proud of what he's built, and the reputation that he's built within his practice is very sweet for us.
That's so awesome. And it all started in Mr. Shackelford's class.
Mr. Shackelford, I don't know where he is now, or if he even realizes, but yeah, he was a big part of our story.
That was so cool. He was a great teacher.
Yeah, he was.
Oh, man. So how did you guys started dating in high school, and then how did you handle that? Because you both went on to college. And
we did. Well, we actually broke up my graduation night.
Oh, no.
And actually, if you ask us, it's still a point of we don't really tell the same story. We blame each other, but we're giving grace either way, because the Lord worked that all out. But we separated for a couple of years whenever we went to school, and kind of went on our own paths. And as the Lord does, he brought us back together at a New Year's Eve party of all places. We were both home for a break from college and saw each other. And by February, we knew we were getting married. Like, it was that fast. And we've been together ever since.
That's so awesome. But you really needed that break, probably. I mean, having met so young.
We did. It was good for us. He did better with it than I did. That's part of my story. I went on to college, and I did the typical college get away from, you know, the house and make not great life choices sometimes.
To be fair, you had been under the care of the police chief.
That's true. I think that kind of was, but my dad was never oppressive in any way. He was super great. But, you know, just being on your own and experimenting and trying to figure out what life looks like. And, you know, I made some choices that weren't great and went down some paths that I'm not too proud of. But part of that brokenness is what brought me to a relationship with the Lord, and what brought me to full-time ministry now. Because for me, I was a freshman in college, and found myself pregnant. And whenever I found myself pregnant, I was scared. I didn't want to tell anyone. I wanted to finish nursing school. I wanted to do all those things. And so I made the decision not to carry that baby. And as soon as I walked out of that place, I knew that was not the right choice for me. And so I lived with that for a very long time. And
I did not know that part of your story.
Yeah, it's very public. I mean, I obviously talk about it.
But I just connected the dots to understand why Raffa is so near and dear to your heart.
I felt very alone, and I isolated myself. I was too scared and too ashamed to tell anyone what had happened. So I just took care of it, and immediately knew I should not have had that abortion. That was my inkling after that. I knew that wasn't right for me.
Did you have incredible guilt? Like, what were those emotions that you felt?
I couldn't even like be around baby showers. I couldn't, friends that were starting to have it just was too much. And I just lived with that guilt and shame for a very long time. And it was actually through my husband. Once we were married, he knew my story. I was very open and honest with him. But we were actually sitting in church one Sunday, and there was a thing in the bulletin about a Bible study for women who had abortions. And he was kind of giving me the elbow, like, maybe you should go check this out. And I did. And it was just the best thing. And it led me on the path. That was in 1999. And I've been involved in pregnancy ministry ever since. So in some form or fashion, whether it was as a nurse doing sonograms, whether it was mentoring someone. But I think the biggest thing for me is I remember what it felt like to be in crisis and to feel alone.
Right.
And it's my purpose now to make sure no woman ever has to feel alone. And so that's what Raffa is for, is we're there for any woman, whether she's wanting to parent or she doesn't know what she wants to choose, to know that she has a support system. I like to say that we can become her chosen family. Because she needs to understand that this is a big choice. And my goal is to make sure she has all the information that I didn't have.
Right.
So whatever path she chooses, she knows she has support. And that's the beauty of what we do at Raffa, is we're able to walk through not just the pregnancy, not just delivery. I've been at some baby deliveries too with girls that their family said, we won't be there. I get to be there,
Right.
which is a really sweet privilege.
Yes.
But then to walk with them through those first years of life. I mean, as a new mom, that's really hard. And we
Yes.
had good support,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
And so for someone who's alone, they need that support. So that's where we get to come in and be there as much as she allows us to be. And it's been a neat privilege to see how God has grown that ministry. And I mean, last year we served over 500 families.
Wow.
And
That's
not
a
all of
lot.
them, it is a lot. And not all of them have that story. Some of them are on the parenting side of it. But I just love that we get to give back in that way.
Yes. How do they find you? How do they?
That's what's interesting. I really don't advertise.
No, you really don't.
I don't. It's literally we go and unlock the door in the morning and we
Wow.
answer the phone and they find us. I think it's word of mouth is how most people say they find us, because if I helped you in your time of need and now you have a friend in the same situation, we've built relationship and we've built trust. And so now they come and they're like, well, I know who you need to go talk to. And we've had them bring them with it. Like, I'll go with you the first
Right.
visit, that buddy system.
Yes.
Girls go to the bathroom together, they go to the doctor together, and so being
a big
able,
deal.
it is a huge deal. And it's just such a sweet thing. Just to see how, just within our area, we are able to make an impact that's not just for her, but it's
Right.
for her children and our community and help build families in that.
Right. That I love that you have that. I think I love even more knowing your story.
Thank you.
And how that came about. And man, I commend you being able to talk about it and share that. That's not easy. That is a really difficult thing to do. But I love how you've let God use you.
Thank you.
For other people and to help others,
Yeah.
I can't imagine being in that moment and what that must feel like. I think remember being a teenager and having to have that conversation or thought could be incredibly scary. And you can't think straight when you're in that moment either. So
Right.
having that service for that I'm so thankful we have that.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell us, how did you created this organization,
No,
right?
I didn't. No, it was actually created out of a women's ministry out of Highland Terrace in
Okay.
2000. And the lady that created, her name is Gail Fry, and she just had such a heart for women and saw a need in our community originally just to kind of help single moms and do that. And it, like I said, it started as part of the women's ministry there, but very quickly there was such a need in our community that within a few years they incorporated as their own 501c3. And so I think it was 2002 we were able to kind of branch out on our own, and now we're supported by multiple churches and denominations and individuals and businesses, and for me, I came on board just as a volunteer. When my first daughter was born, I was a nurse and I was sitting at home with this new baby, and I just had that urge to still nurse.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
I still needed to use my skills and what God had given me. And I already was familiar with this type of ministry from some of the work I'd done. And so I just went and I said, can I just volunteer the days my daughter's at Parents' Day Out? And so I would just come in for a few hours and just volunteer and work with other moms. And then God has just grown that ministry. We became a medical clinic in 2006. So we started offering medical services for free to our community. So the pregnancy services, the pregnancy tests, the ultrasounds, all that is free. And so I went and trained to become a nurse sonographer so I could provide that skill as well.
When it's
Yeah.
free, like, if they have insurance, do they have to pay, or is it
No.
absolutely completely free?
I don't.
It doesn't matter.
I couldn't even tell you how to file for insurance.
Okay.
Yeah. Now my husband can.
So
I can't.
anyone, it literally
Yeah,
is anyone.
everything we do, the
Okay.
counseling, the education, the sonograms, everything is totally free of charge.
Wow.
And that's something that we wanted to make sure, because so many women who feel like they don't have a choice, that feel like they're pigeonholed in some way or scared. Money's often a huge issue.
Yes.
So if we can remove that barrier, we take one step closer to equipping her to really be able to do what she wants to do. So that's why we provide it for free.
And
Yeah.
that's why everyone needs to step in and
Yeah,
help contribute so that you can continue to offer that for free.
It's just such a blessing. I mean, on average, that's a couple $100 a visit for a woman. And most of our clients live in a very low income setting. And so for them, they're probably needing some help getting on pregnancy Medicaid or doing something, in order to get prenatal care. But that first visit is sometimes very prohibitive because of cost. And that's something that a lot of us take for granted, that we can just call the doctor and make an appointment. Well, a couple $100 is a big deal.
Yes.
And if that's something they're like, well, I can't get into prenatal care,
Right.
then why am I going to have this baby? Let's take that barrier away.
Right.
Or if she's, had some sort of addiction in her past and she's like, well, I've already used. What do I do? Okay, well, let's get some rehab. Let's find a way to do that. So the one thing I love about what Raffa's been able to do in our community is be so networked and be able to work well with any issue that a woman who's pregnant might have. And if it's housing, if it's daycare, if it's transportation, let's fix those problems. And so it's maybe a clinic. We really try to meet every need we can find to help her succeed. And that's the goal.
I love that so much. I'm
Thank
so
you.
thankful that we have that here.
Yeah.
Tell everyone how it got its name.
So we were originally A Woman's Heart. That was our original name. And then I want to say it was like 2009, 10, we realized for a woman who was really trying to consider what she wanted to do with her pregnancy, that might not be the most welcoming name. And so we started doing some just kind of test run demographics, and that name was actually chosen through that process. And it actually is spelled, everybody thinks it's an acronym. It's not an acronym. It's the phonetic spelling of Jehovah Rapha, which is Christ the Healer. And because we feel like that's what we do, we help heal families and we help heal, hopefully, generations. And so if we can do that, that's where the name comes from, and we just embrace it fully. We love it.
Wow. When did you decide you wanted to be the one calling the shots, the main gal?
That was also just an opportunity. The position became open, and I had previously served there as an employee and as a volunteer. And so I joke with our volunteers and staff now that once you start at Raffa, it's always in your blood. and that's what happened with me. I already had that taste for it, and I knew that was where God was using me, and I loved just seeing the results and being able to see how, your time and investment affects. And it blessed me so much more, I think, than I ever blessed anybody else. And so I loved that feeling, and I wanted that. And so the position became open, and so I stepped in, and I've been there I started then, I think it was in 2007, maybe. I stepped away for a few years to be home with some kiddos, and then came back in 2012, and I've been there ever since. And it's just been a sweet ride, and just seeing how things that I never thought we'd be able to do, things we never thought we'd be able to offer, how it's just come to fruition. And that's been good.
Has it been hard to also be a mom and running a nonprofit?
Oh, yeah.
Your husband,
Yeah.
having his training position, the physical therapy that he does.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, but my kids have been raised there. My kids have been, sorting donations and packing diapers, and they've served at every fundraising event. I mean, our last in-person banquet dinner that we had, fundraising dinner, my daughter was there with an iPad checking people in, and I love that too, is that they have grown up in service and being able to work in ministry and see that, packing diapers may not seem like much, but whenever they get to see a picture, or they hear me say, hey, we had this little young mom come in who's living in her car and she couldn't afford diapers, and we were able to help her. And we were able to find shelter. They see they got to be a part of that. And so it's a balancing act, but I also have an amazing board who works so wonderfully to make sure that our families come first. For our staff, we know that our families come first. And so they're very good to work around our schedules and help us be present in our communities too, because that's how we serve.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. Let's talk about your kiddos. But I want to ask you one question. You mentioned earlier, when you had your first baby, was that hard?
Oh,
when
yeah.
you gave birth to your first baby?
Oh,
Did
yeah.
it bring back?
All the things. Yeah. And I wasn't really in a place, I think, emotionally or spiritually strong enough to understand how much it was impacting me. And so, I all the guilt set back in, all those things. And it made it really hard for me to bond initially with her. And so I had to luckily I had some amazing Titus II women in my life who saw me struggling and they just stepped in. They didn't even ask permission. They just stepped in. And I'm so grateful for them. And that's part of, again, what we do. So for women who have made that choice and are struggling with it, we're very attentive to that. And we help them when they do get pregnant again. We help them in those first few months and sometimes years afterwards. But we serve a very loving God who gives a lot of grace and forgiveness. And that's what we encourage. And that's what we teach them, that is not something that you have to have over your head forever. It's something that God can use.
Man, can you just shout that from the rooftops?
Right. Put it on a t-shirt.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I mean, I think no matter what it is, we need those reminders,
Yeah.
of what a forgiving and graceful God that we have.
Yeah.
And what is so interesting about you to me is that I can see you truly don't carry that guilt anymore. Like
No.
you're freed from that.
Yeah.
And to get to see and feel that is so incredible.
Thank you.
Just, I don't always see and feel that
Yeah.
when I'm talking with people. And so your journey is just so inspiring.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that with everyone. Let's talk about your other kiddos.
Yeah.
So, because you have adopted kiddos too.
I do. My first three we birthed, and we thought we were done. Actually, I have two daughters and then a son that were our biological children. And actually our son, who's 14 now, the day he started kindergarten, I had cried all the way to school from school to work, like all my babies are in school. And that afternoon, as I'm driving in my driveway after picking everyone up, I get a phone call, and it was from Jessica Edwards, a local attorney who we knew very well. And she said, "Hey, I know this girl." And it was a young girl who was had chosen to place her child for adoption. She was living in a shelter. She had a history of drug use and gang violence and all kinds of things, but had the wherewithal to know she wanted better for her child, and she wasn't quite in a place where she could parent well. And so it was literally 10 people down the road, and we asked to talk to her. And that night we talked to our kids, and they were all on board. We met her on Saturday, and 6 weeks later I was standing in a delivery room and came home with a baby boy. So it was just, we were not planning to adopt, but that so models what God does for us, and honoring her decision was just something sweet. And what's really an amazing God point in this story is she never knew what I did.
Really?
She knew I was a nurse, but she had no idea. So it wasn't connected through Raffa. She wasn't a client there, wasn't a patient, anything. She was in a totally different city out in East Texas. And it was just, and to this day, she just knew I was a nurse.
Oh, wow.
So it's just
That's
really a
cool.
sweet story. But we just fell in love with her. And then now we have our Ben, and he's just the sweetest blessing to our family. So
is she still connected to him too? Or
she's not. We offered that, but she knew her tendencies, and she wasn't quite in a place in recovery yet. And so she said, I don't want to bring that into his world.
But that is the greatest form of love.
Oh, of
to me.
course. I just have so much respect for her and so much love for her. And we still pray for her. We still hope for the best for her, that she will someday be a part of his life if that's what she chooses.
I love your heart. I'm so glad you came on the show. Okay, let's take a few minutes and let's talk about what you love about Greenville. So,
oh my gosh.
Because we've been here all of our lives. It's like we could go on and on forever. But
Yeah.
tell me what some of the things are that you love, or what it is you love about Greenville, and kind of what keeps you here.
I think I think this is the pat answer everybody gives, but it's the people, and it's especially in what I do. We are community supported. So I call on people a lot for help. If I have a girl that I know has a specific need, and I know someone in the community that can fill that specific need, I am not ashamed to ask, and so, but I very rarely get told no, because it's not for me. They're passing that on, and they're able to serve someone else and help. And what I love too is how many people will do that and say, don't tell them it was me. It's just an anonymous thing. It's not about putting their name on something. It's not about any gratification or recognition for them. It's about truly meeting a need, and they don't want their name on it, and to see a community that will do that, and see, like we were chatting earlier about, when Katrina was here, and I had Katrina wasn't here, but when we had hurricane, yes,
the results of Hurricane Katrina.
When we had Louisiana residents at the Hunt County Fairgrounds, I had the opportunity to help serve out there and serve meals there, and we talked about Newman Peters being such a huge part of that. But that really opened my eyes to see how much the people in our community were willing to do whatever. Long hours. It was September. It was very hot. Very limited resources out there, and literally all we had to do is say, this is the need, and we were turning people away. And I think that just speaks. It speaks to your small town love that people, we live in a world where hate is pretty prevalent. But I love that we can walk through town and you see people, and you go to Glenda's and sit down and you're probably going to have a meal with somebody you hadn't seen in a while. But that's available here. And that's the world we want to raise our kids in, and if we can help make that better so they have that experience and they can raise our grandkids in that world, that's what we're here for. And I love that about Greenville, that it's just so supportive of the things that we have here.
Man, drop the mic. Yeah. That was so beautifully said.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to skip over that story with Newman.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I want you to share that story.
Okay. Well, he may kill me for this, but
nah.
So I've known Newman probably most of my whole life because of my dad, just having that relationship with him. And when kind of the call to action came, when they started, I believe it was Judge Bobbitt at the time, came and said, we need help, stand up. And Newman started calling churches and calling, just people he had good relationships with. And he had built credibility. He had stock with them. And I was helping Newman and helping with the church. And then all of a sudden, Monday came and a lot of volunteers had to go back to work. Well, I think I was pregnant at the time. And so I was home and I remember going to Newman and just being very sad. Like, how are we going to do this? I don't know what to do. I mean, they put us in the old law enforcement building out there. There wasn't even a sink. There wasn't running water. We were serving meals. There was no way to keep them warm. It was just all the challenges. That's all I could see. And I went to Newman and he's like, I got this. He took care of it. And he went, and the next day I came out, they were plumbing a line and there was a sink. He got an air conditioner put in. Judge Bobbitt helped with all of that. But then Newman just made that call and said, I need these pastors. I need the churches to show up and serve. And we've joked about that before, that may have been the only time that we could remember. And obviously he's been in Greenville longer than I have, but where so many different pastors from so many different backgrounds were all in the same room and all agreeing and all on the same task to serve the people. And there was no competition. There was nothing.
Doing what we were called to do.
They were being the church.
Yes.
And I will never forget that night when just looking out and seeing all those pastors sitting there, and what a privilege that was to see them come together and do that. And hopefully serve well. I feel like we were able to meet the need for as long as we needed to meet it. And I totally credit Newman with that. He would never be the person out in the front. He always made, pushed me out, made me talk to everybody, but he made it happen behind the scenes. And he's one of our gifts to our community that just made that happen.
He really is. And we recently had him on the show,
Yeah.
and he's so humble. All he will say is, I'm blessed. I mean, it's stories like this that make Newman who he is to our community. So I'm so glad you shared that story with me earlier, and I'm glad you shared it with everyone now. It shows, again, the hearts of our community, from Newman to you to the pastors. And so I thank you so much for that. Okay, I don't think I told you at the beginning, but I like to ask a random question at the end of the show.
Okay.
So I would like for you to pick a number between 1 and 20, and I'm going to ask you this random question.
Oh, okay.
There's no prep for
Well, I'm
it.
going to go with 3. That tends to be a good number for me.
Okay. All right, number 3. What is your biggest fear?
Oh, well, gee, go easy. I would probably say my biggest fear is missing an opportunity.
Really?
Yeah. And so, especially in the work I do, sometimes you get one shot.
Right.
You get one conversation. And being able to not have the weight of the world falling in where you're distracted or you're looking at other things, but being present in the moment and being able to take that opportunity and just seize it and just not be fearful about whatever that is, whether it's you need to speak truth and love to someone, or you need to be able to take the point to apologize for some way you've wronged someone, not letting that sit and fester. But I think that's it, is not, I don't ever want to look back and say, man, I wish I would have done that differently. I want to be okay with the decisions that were made, to know that I've done my best.
I love that. That just sums up your whole heart.
Thank you.
Well, Threesa, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure. I've known you forever, at least half of my life for sure. And I've learned so much about you just sitting here. And so thank you for being open and truly sharing your heart through some of the hardest times. But God's brought you through that and made you such a witness and light for everyone else. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Okay.
Thank you for watching Heart of Greenville. This video series, which is designed to celebrate Greenville, Texas, is spearheaded by REMAX 3D Real Estate.